Welcome everybody to the second evening of our SHWAP online webinar. I'd just like to mention our kind sponsors for the 3 evenings. They are No Backs, Rapper, Elanco, British Wool, MSD, Animal Health, Bimeda, iLivestock. And also, if you want to register for any of the ROSA or AMTRA points, if you could do that in the chat, put your name and your membership numbers down there, and then we'll take any questions throughout the evening anybody's got in, if they could do that in the Q&A, and we'll be answering questions at the end. So once both speakers have done their slots, we'll take questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the evening, Dr. Claire Morgan-Davies. Claire is a multidisciplinary scientist with a focus on extensive livestock production, particularly in mountain areas. She gained around 30 years experience working on livestock systems research, and for the past 10 years, she's been leading several European research projects on innovative technologies for small ruminant systems, so Techcare and Smart, as well as being partner to several other focusing on technology and sheep systems. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Claire to start us off.
Thank you, Susie. And as you say, it's sheep and tech, basically. That's what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, I just share my screen and hopefully it works. So I can't talk about all the projects that have been involved in the past 10 years, but I thought I would focus on one that's just finished in August. It was called Techcare. We were looking at innovative technology for small ruminant welfare management. And I thought it might be interesting to share with you some of the lessons we've learned after 5 years. And as Susie said, I'm working for SRUC, and you've got my detail here. And thanks for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk about that project that's been part of my life for the past 5 years. So first of all, the project in itself. So it was a 5 years project. We started in 2020, in the middle of COVID in September. That was a bit challenging. And we just finished in August. So it was a 5 years project. We had 9 countries involved, as you can see on the map, 18 different partners, a mixture of academic and industry partner. And I was a coordinator. We were focusing on meat sheep production. So that was partner from the UK, Ireland, France, and Israel. We were looking at dairy sheep as well. So that was again partner in France, Spain, Italy, Romania, and finally dairy goats. And it was mostly Norway and Greece. So quite a mixture of production and a type of landscape as well. And we were trying to look at innovative technologies that can help welfare management in sheep and goat system. So just before I come to describe the project, a bit of context. There is a lot of sheep and goats in Europe, and I should have said that was a European project. So a lot of sheep and goat in Europe, and if we count Norway and Israel and us as well, it's nearly over 100 million. So quite a big production. Very often we found this production in very challenging environment, whether it's very wet like northwest of Europe or very hot in the Mediterranean areas. And we know that they are generally part of the landscape, tradition, cultural heritage. So they play a very important role for the local economy, for society, and more for biodiversity and maintaining these sorts of environment. But there is a lot of issues, as you're probably aware. In the meat system, it's more the lack of labor that becomes a big problem. And in the dairy system, it's more the increase of flock size. So all of these issues may have a very big impact on the attention and the care that the individual animal may receive. We also know that, so I'm going to say PLF a lot in this in this presentation. PLF means precision livestock farming, so it's using technology to monitor and follow what the animals are doing. We know that these technology are widely adopted in more high-value animal sector, for example, the dairy cows, but not very much in sheep and goats. But we also know that there is probably a lot of welfare and production efficiencies that could be achieved if we were using technology in these contexts. And also, often welfare in sheep and goats is overlooked, and people tend to focus to more intensive production system. So it was in this kind of context that we decided in this project to look at the question, can we manage welfare in small ruminant system using precision livestock farming and technologies? So the objective of the project were to propose innovative and cost-effective technology, and I insist on cost-effective because that was really something that we were working on during the whole project. So trying this technology to improve welfare management in small ruminant by using technologies that are adapted to the production of sheep and goat, by trying to consider the whole production system, in our case, going all the way to the abattoir, trying to develop some early warning system, and then look at appropriate business model. We had 5 key steps in that big project. The first one was to prioritize welfare challenge and issues in the various contexts, then to identify potential solution, and then validate this solution in different and real conditions. Then look at business model and of course communicate what we were doing. So we had 2 main outcomes that we wanted to achieve in the project. We wanted to have a list of ready-to-use solutions for small ruminant welfare management that were tested and validated in commercial farm. But we also were aware that we probably will get a long list of potential technologies that are a potential but not yet ready to be deployed. But the idea was to try to cater for the whole sector of small ruminant farmer in Europe. There are many challenges, of course. The first one would be the cost of the technology, but also the expectation of the farmer, and also the ease or difficulty of implementing this solution. How do we analyze the data we're getting from the technology? Is the market ready? And also the fact that we had a very, very varied production system. I mean, you can see on the picture at the bottom, it's dairy goats in Norway who cross the river on a rickety bridge every day to get milked. So it is very, very different from where we're the sort of system that we could get between the different countries. So how did we implement the project? What we did first, we started by doing an inventory of welfare issues for sheep and goats. At the same time, we were looking at precision livestock farming tools that already exist or are being discussed in the literature and see if this one could be applicable to sheep and goats. From the welfare issues, we had a first step in the project to try to prioritize these welfare issues, trying to whittle them down to a manageable list. And then from these welfare priorities, we developed 4 broad indicators that could be used to measure these welfare issues. Then from the indicator and the PLF tool, we have a final list by comparing these 2 systems. We had a final list of tools that could help address the welfare priorities and the indicators that we were developing. So to do that, after we developed some prototypes of tools that we tested on experimental farm. We also had tools that were piloted on demonstration farm and during transport trial. And finally, we took some of the tools onto large scale to validate them, and we used commercial farm for that. So we had a lot of experiment and trials on various farms in Europe. And as well as looking at the data we could get from the different tools we were putting in these farms, we were doing welfare assessment at the same time to understand how the tool could look at welfare issues for monitoring. From this, we analyzed all of this data, and we tried to create some platform for the farmer to look at and get some alert. And all along, we tried to engage the stakeholders. So we had a mix of stakeholders right from the start, and regularly every 6 months or a year, we were having national workshop to inform the stakeholders and get some feedback. So the aim was to have a project that was useful for the farmer, because at every step we were asking for their feedback. So as I say, we were doing national workshop regularly in all the countries, and we finished by having a big consumer survey to just understand how the wider public view animal welfare. And then we developed some business model. I cannot go through all of the steps with you tonight, but I will give you a flavor of some of the highlights. Just as a indication, the pilots were for the UK. We had some pilots in our research farm near Crianlarich with SRUC, but we also had some pilot being held at the Modern Research Institute near Edinburgh. But there were also some experimental farm in France where they looked at dairy and meat sheep, in Spain with goats and sheep for dairy, and then Sardinia and Norway, and some in Israel as well. We looked at transport. In the UK, we looked at sea transport from the Shetland and Orkney Isle to Aberdeen, and then a bit of transport by trailers. And in Spain, they also looked at transport of kids and lamb by trailer. And I will show you some results later on. The large-scale farm, we had 8 partners involved and 5 different countries. You can see where they were. We had 56 farms in total, and we were looking at the 3 sectors. For the meat sheep sector, which is probably the most relevant for the UK, we had the Irish, who had 10 different farms where they were testing some technology, and in Spain as well, they were looking at meat sheep, but more in feedlots, so a bit a different system to what we're used to in grazing system in the UK. But just to show you the breadth of the project. So in terms of the highlights that are relevant, so I will focus a little bit on the welfare issues and how we record them. Then I can't talk about all the technology we'll trial, but I thought we might maybe spend a bit of time looking at the tool we use to look at the weight change in the animal and proximity to resources. They were quite topical for the UK, and I will touch on some of the transport trial as well. So if we go first in terms of welfare priority and issues. So what you've got here, when we started the project, we were looking at each of the production, but we quickly found out that in fact the main differences were whether the animal were mostly indoor or outdoor. You can see that for the animal in outdoor position, we had issue with parasites were the first issue that was ranked. Then lameness and nutritional issues came close second. Then mastitis, ectoparasite, poor maternal relationship, so issue of mothering, mismothering, and then morbidity and mortality rate. While indoor, it's more or less the same issues, but maybe in a different order. So nutritional issues and mastitis were a bit more higher up. Mastitis, especially because indoor were mostly dairy animal. But the housing conditions, stocking density, and issue with respiratory disease were also quite high up. So all elements that are more relevant for animal kept inside. For the UK, the 3 welfare priority were first nutritional issues, whether it's under or malnutrition, then lameness, and then parasites. So, and we focused on that in the pilot in the UK. So the other issue was how can we assess these welfare issues, and then what are the impact of the welfare issues on the animal response and change. So that gave us some, by answering this question, we were able to develop some indicators. So in terms of nutrition, if we look at the change in body state, that can give us some information about the nutritional state or the disease impact. So we were looking at weight or fatness. We can look in terms of change in behavior, so change in their movement activity, intake of food or water, social contact, or rhythm, whether it's during the day or during the night, so more circadian rhythm. But we also looked at environmental risk factor, even if they are not a welfare issue per se, they are a risk to welfare. And we were able to have sensor off the animal, so antennas or just cameras, or they can be on the animal. So we were looking at the kind of a panel of these different issues and technology. So it's a big table, but just to show you a little bit how we were working up. Here we've got all the devices that we tested, and there is quite a few. I think we are 12 in total. And they range from water meter, weight rate, proximity logger, using tags, etc., or milk meter or weighing scale for the milk tank. So that's all the tools that we thought could be useful to look at welfare issues. And here at the top are the welfare priorities that were developed. And in the middle is really how we can use this broad welfare indicator to use a PLF tool that can give us an indication for welfare priority. So for example, if I look at the walkover way, the walkover way can help us to understand nutritional issues by looking at the body weight change, for example. If we look at, for example, ultra high frequency ear tag for mastitis, it can be a behavioral change of the animal. If they've got mastitis, we might notice a change in their pattern. So that's how we were thinking of combining both welfare and PLF tool and try to test what we could see using this kind of proxy in a sense. So what we used in the UK, we tested weight rates to look at the weight gain or weight loss or the growth rate of the lamb. And as I say, the welfare issues was to have issues like if your animal is not growing fast enough, it might be associated with disease, parasitism, or you can have issues with food, etc. Tags and reader was to look at individual movement and access to key resources, especially food resource during the winter. And any change in the access may associate with a problem, an issue, or a disease. So we were really trying to look at deviation from a normal pattern when we're using these tags and reader. And finally, weather station or environmental sensors, trying to record temperature, humidity, and environmental parameter, and try to assess the risk factor for heat stress or respiratory distress, or also looking at the roughness of a journey, for example, in trailers, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or sensory load during transport. So just for you to see how we were looking at these different tools. As well as that, we were in a partnership. One of our partners was a company Breeder, who are developing a platform looking at recording all sorts of information for sheep and cattle. And as part of the project, they developed a module on their app that allow us to record automatically the welfare assessment. So we were beeping the tag of the animal, and then we could enter the score of the welfare. So that was a nice way of having all our information in one place and then exporting that data. So that was for the welfare. Now I will spend a bit of time talking about some of the PLF tools that we tested and tried to validate. So the first one was to look at the weight change. And one tool which I thought might be of interest to you tonight is a walkover way developed by our colleague in France at INRA. So the idea is try to automatically weigh the sheep rather than having to weigh them when they come through the fang, is try to have them walking through a weigh crate during the day, and then we can look at their weight several times during the day. You can see here some picture of the device in different setting, and it's a mobile crate. The idea is your animal goes through the weigh crate next to a panel where his ear tag is recorded, and then it goes somewhere else. And we want the animal to spend enough time in the weigh crate so that the weight is recorded accurately. So they developed it with a solar panel and try to have a material that's quite light so we can transport it and put it in a field, for example. So again, similar idea of what it looks like. You've got an attractant zone at the top, and you try to have your animal go into that attractant zone by going through the weigh crate. It can be water, mineral salt, shade, scratcher, anything. But you want to have a one-way flow of animal. So they've tested that trial, technology in France and in Italy in different settings, mostly outdoors. And they found very good results. They also developed a system to filter any outlier. If an animal, two of them go in, for example, then you could see and discard that weight. And using that system allowed them to be able to detect nutrition issues that were highlighted by change in live weight of the animal. So that was quite a nice new technology, or using a weight crate but in a different setting and a different way to be able to look at by proxy any welfare issue that might arise. The two other one I will describe now are looking at proximity to resources, and we were looking at ultra high frequency tags and Bluetooth low energy beacon and reader. So we had a device that was set up by some French partner in the project using ultra high frequency tag instead of the low frequency tags. The advantage of the UHF tag is the reading distance is much longer than a normal tag, and you can record more than one animal at a time. So the way we were doing it is we were putting antennas, you can see on the system here, antenna above a feed block, and the animal had the tag on their neck here. It was just for the setup of the trial. And we had big visual tags so we could see from far away which animal was next to the bucket or not. Inside here, we had the suitcase that contained the reader and all the electronics. And we had a power bank. The system was developed in France for indoor system. It worked very well, and we were quite keen to see if we could use it in an outdoor setting. The advantage of using a UHF tags and reader is that the tags are not very costly, and once you've invested in your antenna, you just need to buy a tag. So we tried it in winter 2023. We had 50 ewes on roughly 20 hectares, and we were looking more at nutritional issues and lameness. So we were weighing the sheep regularly every week and doing their body condition score, looking at their welfare assessment as well using the application I was mentioning earlier, and we were collecting the UHF data that were gathered in the suitcase. We were only able to do 8 hours per day because we had some issues with our power bank. After 8 hours in January, we were just dying slowly, and at the weekend we were not recording either. But what it gave us as a first indication, we were able to count the number of days when the tag of each ewe was detected next to the feeding block. And you can see that some days a lot of the animal were next to the feeding block. Some of the days they decided it was not for them. So, and then what was interesting is we recorded at the same time the rainfall pattern, and we noticed that when it rained, the animal tended to visit less the place, the bucket. So it is still work in progress, but we already were able to detect some variation between the ewes. It was not a continuous data set because we had some holes in it for the reason I mentioned, but we were still able to look at variation between the animal. Not many animals had welfare issues, so that was also a bit of a problem. So we were trying to carry on the trial maybe longer period, not just 1 month, and sort out the battery. But as a prototype, as a concept, it is something that's worth thinking about and research a bit more. The Bluetooth low energy, again, it's use a different technology. It's using the Bluetooth. So everybody in their phone, you would have Bluetooth. So the way it works is you've got a reader and a beacon, and the beacon advertises its presence, and the reader reads the beacon. So we developed a box here that was able to read information from this little beacon that we got from China. These beacons are not very costly either. I think they were less than £10 each. So again, something that can be interesting for sheep farmer. And we are looking at proximity to resource, presence or absence next to a feed bucket, for example, and also animal location. So each reader was able to detect the nearest 16 beacon or 16 sheep every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes we know which are the 16 sheep around a particular point. So we did 2 trials. One was around winter feeding again. This time we had 100 ewes, and as you can see, we are putting the reader on the hay or above the bucket, and every time the animal comes, it's recorded. We also did similar things for lambing, and that was the work of our PhD student. And then she did the same idea, except she put the reader on the ewe and the beacon on the lamb in a little collar. And we could look at the distance between the ewe and the lamb using that technology. And she was interested in mismothering issues. So in terms of winter feeding, that looks a bit scary, but I will explain. So each number here, so that row here, each number is a ewe. And here is the number of contact the ewe has made with the reader every day. So for example, on the 16th of February, this ewe went 66 times next to the box, to the reader. And here it was there 309 times, every time it was detected. So we can see the number of daily contact. But what's interesting is the one that are there next to the reader, and then suddenly they stop coming. And we thought having that kind of threshold and see if an animal is near a resource and then suddenly stopped coming, and try to understand the reason behind it, can be the basis for developing alert for the farmer. We noticed as well for that one in particular that it was lame when we did the welfare assessment. So it is still work in progress, but having this sort of system can allow us to have maybe something on a phone eventually that tells you your number for 4020 has not been next to your feeder for a few days. Maybe go and check and see if something is the matter. So it was always trying to see if we can use that as something to alert the farmers that something is not quite right. For the lambing, same ideas. We did over 6 weeks over lambing, 30 ewes and 60 lamb. And by using the same system, Amy, our PhD student, was able to look at differences, detect differences in contact between the ewe and the lamb by breed. So we had blackface and Clin. By age, when the lamb was getting a bit older, the number of contacts were different. And also due to welfare issues. She found that when a ewe was lame, she had more ewe-lamb contact, maybe because she can't run away as fast from a lamb, but she was also less social with the other ewes, so she had less ewe-to-ewe contact. So again, that can give us some indication and some help towards early warning system that something is not quite right with your animal without having to look at them all day. And finally, again, that was part of the work that Amy did for her PhD. By using a reader put on different posts and by triangulation, seeing which animal was being read by the reader or not, she was able to localize the sheep with an accuracy of roughly 20 meters, which in outdoor setting is really valuable and interesting. So that's really all I wanted to say in terms of the tool we developed. Now I'm going to spend a bit of time to show you some of the results we got from the transport trial, so by boat and by trailer. So the first one was a trial that was done at SRUC with some of my colleagues in Edinburgh. They were looking at the transport of the lamb from the Shetland and Orkney Island by boat, not to go to the abattoir, but just to be fattened. And the way it works is the animal, when they are on the boat, they are considered as not being transported. So it's not part of their transport voyage. But in that particular project, we wanted to see how much of an environmental impact being on a boat it had on the sheep. So the sheep are put on this cassette here when they are on the boat next to lorries and other vehicles. And we were looking using all sorts of sensor, but in particular this one, we were looking at pitch and roll. And knowing on a boat you can have 6 planes of pitch and roll, you can go backward, forward, but also on the side with the waves. We were looking at noise level and temperature, and accelerometer to look at these different pitch and roll I was saying. So we are looking after loading the animal in the cassette here, when they were at sea and then on arrival, and we also had cameras. And you can see that here it's a kind of sort of noise that the animal were subjected to. And I think the most noisy was when the animal were being put on the boat when the boat was just starting, and then it just calmed down a bit, but it's still quite noisy, especially where they were. And here you can see that the pitch and roll depends on the type of journey. So some journey were really, really quite rolly, let's say. That was one from Lerwick here, and some of them were less so, it depending on the sea condition. So having this sensor allowed us to follow a little bit what the animal were doing. So it, as I say, provide more information about the experience of the animal during the transport. And what we noticed as well was the behavior of the animal was really affected by the condition. When the sea was really rough, the animal tended to stand up, not eat at all, probably feel a bit of nausea. And we notice that the environment is very noisy and it's really difficult to predict any movement in 6 planes. So we could not develop any alert because we were not at that stage yet, but already it gives us some useful information as to what the animal are experiencing when they are on a boat on a journey for 12 hours in the North Sea. We also looked at road transport. So we did 2 trials with trailers. So here that's from our research farm near Crianlarich to the mart at Stirling. And it's quite a hilly road. And the Spanish did exactly the same as well in one of their hill mountain as well. Again in a trailer with young lamb and kids. In Scotland, we were using lamb ready to be sent to the abattoir. We were putting cameras, accelerometer, and temperature as well. We also put an accelerometer in the pickup as well as in the trailer to see the difference. And you can see here it's the vibration, the acceleration that the lamb in Scotland were getting. So when it's flat, it's when it was a bit kind of a road that was not too windy, but as soon as we go a little bit in the windy road here, you can see the vibration. So quite a lot of acceleration that the lamb are getting, but the rider at the same time, nothing. So being a driver in your pickup, you might not notice how shaky it is for your animal in the back. The Spanish did the same, as I say, with kids and lamb, and it was the same thing. So in the trailer and the driver's cabin, you see the difference between the different acceleration. So the transport environment are very noisy, whether it's by sea or by road, and the vibration and acceleration is generally much greater for the animal than for the driver or for the captain on the boat. So that's some of the take-home message we got from these transport trials that we did. So I think that's all I want to say about some of the detail, but after 5 years, we had 2 main outputs, if you remember from what I was saying at the start. We wanted to have technology ready to implement on farm to improve the welfare management. Well, we found some. We found that the EID weight rate and reader was useful. The electronic milk meter, milk tank weight, I could not show you the result, but they gave promising results as well for the dairy system. And the weather station is also something useful. We also had developed that application from breeder to look at the welfare scores. And we also had another application that was developed by Spanish partner. I didn't have time to mention it, but it's using some of these environmental sensor inside the shed, and that can tell you if the temperature is getting too high or if your bedding is getting too wet. So again, give you some alert. So that's the sort of things that the project had done that any farmer could use now and say, yes, that's useful for welfare monitoring. We also had a set of technology only available to innovative farmers because they're a bit more complicated to implement, especially if you're not familiar with technology. So that's the walkover way. The one I was showing you is still, it's not difficult to use, but you need to be more happy with having already a recording of your animal. We also had some system that was developed by the colleague in Israel, Trough AI. So similar things, they were looking at water intake and weighing the sheep at the same time. The ultra high frequency platform or tags I was mentioning you are part of these technologies that are nearly there but not quite ready. We also had some platform developed by some for dairy sheep. And some colleague in Norway tried GPS collar and got some interesting results as well, especially in terms of disease and running from predator. But again, I could not show you all of that. But we still have a list of technologies that can be used, but not quite there yet. And finally, a lot of prototypes, something that are not ready to be bought straight away. So the Bluetooth I was mentioning, it's still prototype. Any proximity logger would be the same. Accelerometer are very complicated to use. Again, it's not quite there for the market, but it is still interesting. And then we were looking at milking order and weight change. We also developed, as I was saying, welfare priority list. We had some guidelines how to assess the welfare, and some indicator for transport. So in a nutshell, that's everything we tried to do during these 5 years. So, and hopefully some of what we found for sheep and goats can be a blueprint for other species. So I'm aware it's a lot of information, but take-home message is PLF can be used for welfare monitoring. We found that after 5 years, we did find some tools that could be used by the farmer to look at welfare issues. And what we got as well, it's really important to try to get as much individual data from your sheep flock as you can, and that will help you understand how to manage it for welfare issue or production. But you need to understand what the data means, and that's really the crunch point, and that's why we're trying to develop this platform. But there are existing technologies that can be helpful, as I was just saying. It doesn't have to be complicated. A weight crate is not that difficult to use. And there are some promising, affordable technology. Not every farmer needs to buy a GPS collar for their sheep. There might also be other things on the market in the next 5 years that would be much better for the animal. So if you want more information, as I say, it was just a very quick look around of everything we've done in 5 years, and I only focus on certain technology, but please visit our website. We've also have done a lot of videos about the different technology and the welfare outcome, and we've got also a place on Zenodo if you're interested to look at. And thank you for your attention. I hope I was not too long, and if you've got any question, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Claire. That was really interesting. I particularly thought it was interesting, the trials you did on the transport. So yeah, that looks really good. So hopefully I have some questions for you at the end. Thank you very much. Right, I'd just like to remind, if anybody joined us a bit late that on tonight to get their Rosa or AMTRA points, just a reminder to put your name and number in on the chat, please. So next speaker we've got is Fiona Hutchings. Fiona qualified from Edinburgh Vet School in 1993 and has worked in practice and in the pharma industry in the UK, Europe, and the US. Fiona became ruminant technical manager for Novartis in 2008, which is now Elanco. Her main interests are sheep parasites and how we can practically manage them on farm for the best results. Fiona has been part of the SCOPS group for over 14 years now and has also chaired the National Office of Animal Health, Environment and Sustainability Committee. So Fiona, welcome, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Susie. I'll just see if I can share this. Right, where are we? There we go. You can see that all right? Let me just put it on. Yep, we should just got the right one. Yeah. Let me just put it on the screenshot. There we go. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak. It's really good that it's really pleased to do that. And first of all, I'm Fiona Hutchins. I have worked for Elanco. So now this is my it's my 19th year now. But Elanco are an unusual in the world of pharmaceutical companies for animal health. Is we haven't been bought by anybody, but we've bought lots of other companies. So we're in our 71st year now. An American-based company, but obviously in the UK, and we're 50-50 farm and small animal across the world. But in the UK, a lot of us will know us for the sheep products because we've acquired a lot of companies over the years. I was Novartis, but we've had Young's were part of that, Ciba-Geigy, we've got Janssen in there, we've all consolidated over the years. So that's who Elanco is, and still committed to farm animal producing, we're what we call a pioneer company, so we produce them from from the very beginning right up to launch. So again, that's something that we're still committed to in the farm animal arena. So what am I going to talk about tonight? Well, parasites, sheep parasites would be my favourite topic, and I can talk for hours on this, but this project all came about actually because I was just thinking, as you know, I do a lot of talks. I've done a lot of talks over the years, but I was like, are they actually any interest to people? Are there people taking anything from them? Because I haven't done anything different for years. We do it in a slightly different way, but is it actually helping? Because there's so much good information out there about parasites, especially. Is it actually useful to people? Am I just, am I boring people? What we could do that actually makes a difference to people is because me just talking on a big level about you should do this, should do that, it doesn't always help. And again, this is at all different levels. A lot of people take some of it, but other people, it's not for them. So I was out walking the dogs and could we do something different? And this is where this whole project came from. And it's a new project. We haven't done anything like this before. So bear with us. We're not quite sure how it's all going to pan out because it's a different way of doing stuff. And I say parasites is we're focusing on, but not only, but it's about using data, but also how do we transmit that information? How do we make it relevant to people? So it's been originally named the Farm Project in a lingo. Excuse me, I've got this awful cough. But what we're trying to say is it's managing parasites, and it can be really positive. It can bring positive rewards. And I want to say it up front. This is not about saying, a lot of times we've been for years saying where if you get resistance and you're all doomed if you don't change what you're doing and never should change. I think that for SCOPs for the last 10 years, we've moved away from that. It's actually changing can bring benefits, but because a lot of people are doing this really well, they're managing parasites well, but there are other ways to do it. You don't have to do it. And please, I'm not here to tell you you should change, you should do different. If you think there's a way to do it different and you do want to change, then, is there a way that the whole industry can help? Because it's not straightforward. And it's not saying, anybody says it's really easy to change how you manage, and we're talking predominantly about worms here. If anybody says it's really easy to change and just do that, then I don't believe them. Not saying you shouldn't do it because it's positive benefits, but it takes a bit of time. And, the work from SCOPs is brilliant. All the research that was done, all the wonderful people involved with SCOPs, like Leslie Stubbings and Daenerys and Kevin's here tonight as well, and Matt Blythe, all these people over the years that have brought their knowledge together. That information's there, but it was actually put there for advisors. And it's not like a blueprint of every farm should do this. It's actually information which says, you can get a lot more out your lambs, or you're doing well, but you could do a bit better. Or if you want more out of lambs, there's a different way to do it. Here's the information how to do it, but you've got to tailor it to your farm. It's not one size fits all. And there was nothing wrong with the way we wormed sheep before when we did the ewes and lambs, and then we did the lambs every 3 to 4 weeks. That was based in good science. There's nothing wrong with it, but we've adapted over the years. We've realised that we probably don't need to do it then. The weather's changed. We don't need to do it when they're dry. So how do we tailor stuff to make it beneficial to your farm so you actually get benefit now? It's not about saying you're all doomed. It's about, can I get some benefit now? But that's not as easy as it's made out to be. And it's not something you can, if I do an hour talk, and I'm sure you've all been to talks where, I've been to talks from some of my colleagues, and I've done it myself sometimes, where we talk about the whole of parasitology in about an hour, and we tell you so much stuff. I'm sure nobody listens to a word of it. It doesn't really help you because it's not, some of it's not really that relevant. But the whole point is, how do we actually manage change on farm? And so what we're saying is, could we take the information from SCOPs? Could we take a farm and actually show it being done? This is not a 1 year project. This is not a 2 year project. If people like this project, would like to extend it for years, to be honest with you, because you don't just take the SCOPs manual, read it all and change everything overnight. That's impossible. It's how do you actually manage it, and how do you make it relevant in a farm situation? Because you can't just take parasitology out and say, we're just going to worm our sheep. This is all we're interested in, and remove all the day-to-day, all the other challenges you have on farm. You can't take that out. And a lot of you have done this already. So please, if you've done it, it's brilliant. But as you know, it's not necessarily been a straightforward thing. Everybody's at different stages of this or desire to do it. But could we actually show somebody doing it? And if we could do that, could we actually show it happening in real time? And what team would we need to make that happen? And they say it's a kind of living case study. And the plan is, and it's a grand plan, and I'm not sure, we're still not sure exactly how it's all going to work. excuse me. But could we video, could we, basically take a journal of what's happening on the farm? And so it might be useful to other people. It doesn't mean to say you have to do exactly like this farm, but there's some principles that might be useful to you, or could it stimulate discussion? Because none of this is black and white. It's not you should, you shouldn't. It's what's right for your farm and how do you use data, how do you use all this stuff to make the right decisions for your farm. So it's really, in some respects, it's a point for discussion. And other farmers and prescribers like vets, is it somewhere we can have these debates, have this discussion, and see somebody actually doing it. So that's the grand plan of it. So we're still in very early stages of it. But the whole point is we had to find somebody who was willing to do this. Because as you can imagine, and what we didn't want was, we didn't want a farm who was at the top, who'd done a lot of this, done all of it, and they had a perfect setup, they had a perfect situation, because that probably wasn't that relatable. And this is what we wanted was a traditional family farm who had all the challenges of implementing change in a family farm. Because as you all know, it's not just about, I need to do this differently. It's like, how do we get everybody on the farm? Is everybody happy while we're changing? Some people are, we've always done it this way, I don't want to change. And so there's all these other challenges opposed to just the actual mechanics of doing it. So we had to have somebody who was actually willing to do this. So we said, well, the best way is let's ask somebody. Traditionally, what's happened in a lot of these projects is somebody has been asked to do it. So we actually said, no, let's change it around and say, would somebody want to do it? Because to be honest with you, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting you and your farm out there to say, this is where we are, this is what we've done, this is what we'd like to do, some things differently. Not because and this is not about having a bad farm and making it good. That is not the case. This is we wanted a good farm who was just saying, I can do things differently, but I want to work with a team to make that happen and use some of I know there's more things I can improve. So that's what we did. So we put an advert out in social media, because the whole point was, if the person wasn't engaged with social media, there was no point, because you need somebody who's social media savvy, somebody who wants to be on it, who wants to put themselves out there, because we all know it's hard enough with your neighbours and your peer group, but if you're actually putting yourself out there as a farmer and people are seeing what you're doing, that could lead to criticism, and it could lead to, it's not everybody would want to do that. So we also had to have somebody who was already saying, look, I'm taking my farm here. This is not about us or the group of people who are the team who are doing this, telling this farmer what to do. It's about, as a group, what does the farmer want to achieve and how do we help them do that? How does this group of people help? It's not a preaching. It's not a, we'll come and tell you what to do. And if I make one point tonight, that's not what it is. It's about, how do we work with a farmer to find out what they want to do and do the most, and they're willing to share that. So that's where we're at. So we put out an advert on social media, and again we said so we did that in about February, and we had some really good people apply, but we had to look at who would be the best fit, who would be the person that would probably be most relatable, and also have lots of areas that we can discuss over the years. So the people who we chose and who put their video on was actually Richard Stanber and his family in Devon. I think some of you may know Richard and the family because he hosted Southwest Sheep this year. But Richard, again, they've moved. Richard now runs the farm. His dad had run it for many years, and there was a transition, and they have about 1,200 sheep, 150 suckler cows, but they've changed a lot over the last 4 to 5 years as well, because they were a traditional mules with using a lot of Suffolk, and then having indoor lambing, using a lot of cake, using a lot of fertilizer, a sort of high input system. But through a desire to change, and also with the inputs going up with the Ukraine war, etc., and fertilizer and feed going up, they said, you know what, we're going to go to outdoor lamb, and we're going to change our sheep breed to shedders, and we're going to put herbal lays and reduce our cake and reduce our fertilizer. So they'd already made decisions, they'd already seen where they wanted to go. But one area Richard wanted to work was on parasite control. How do I help with that? How do I get that better? And he's also doing some data as well. So he was on the way. He knows where he's going. He's got a really good idea of what he wants to do, and the whole family. And it's not, I'm not going to share all of the information, but that's not been all moving the sheep breed and doing things differently that's been a challenge in itself. So that's the family we're working with, and they're absolutely fantastic to work with. They're a joy to work with. and they're a great family. The two boys, George, the oldest one, he's already getting involved with the farm as well, and everybody's involved with this farm. Laura does stuff. They've got their own. They supply sheep. They do their own meat, and they supply that to local farmers. Laura's doing a pumpkin patch this time, so diversification. So they would be they're just a traditional family who were running a sheep farm, but also looking at ways to make that as the best enterprise they can. So again, just I say, a really joy to work with the Stanburys. And I was there today in the freezing cold. They promised me sunshine, but they didn't. So who are our team? So we have to have a team to do this. So we've got obviously Richard and his family. We've got Nerys Wright, an independent sheep consultant who many of you will know, very heavily involved with SCOPs and ex-HDB. We've got Matt who's I think was meant to chair tonight, but he was still on farm when I left him, trying to get all the equipment to work together. Matt obviously is there. And we didn't know, so we were always going to use Nerys and Matt as our consultants, but we didn't actually know which vet. It would have to be whoever applied, and it was so good luck that it happened to be Mike Glover, who's down in Devon, Torch Vets, who's an excellent sheep vet, heavily influential in the Sheep Veterinary Society, and just knows his sheep, and it was just great it was him. Also Debbie Whitaker, who happens to be Richard's neighbour, and she's our SGP from Moe Valley. So because you have to have everybody involved. There's no point changing and doing stuff if everybody who's involved with the farm doesn't really know what's going on. Carolyn is our own vet in the south. So Carolyn is a very experienced vet. She's part of the team as well. And then we have Ian, who's keeping us all right and taking videos and telling us to shut up and making sure we get good content that we can share with everybody, because it's got to be interesting. It's a story. It's not just you should do this, you should do that. This is about a story, because it makes it more interesting. So what are we going to produce? Well, I say what we're going to put. This is what our aim is to produce. I'm saying 3 to 4 episodes. This is not this farming life, that farming life. This is not of that magnitude. It's basically, we're going to be following Richard and the family managing the ewes, the lambs and the tups over the years, hopefully years, if people follow it and get engaged with it. It's like, what's happening, what are we doing, and it's not, parasites is our big focus, but it's not everything, because you can't disconnect it from everything. So we will be looking at nutrition, we will be looking where they're grazing, and it's building up that story. What data do we need, and especially data. And I think data is a big word, and people can get very hung up about how much data. And in fact, listening to Matt Blythe, if you listen to Matt, my goodness, my eyes boggle, sort of thing, of all the things you can collect. But you have to, as Matt says, you've got to start with what do you want to achieve, and then what we're going to start measuring and build it up. And that's why I want to do this project for a few years, is so we can build this up. Some of you are doing all of it already. And again, this is one thing with social media, is because we're going to put it on YouTube. Facebook is a sort of teaser, but then on Facebook and on YouTube, there'll be the different videos of what's happening and as an update. But it's to stimulate discussion, because none of us have exactly the right answer. This hopefully will be the right, and the decisions will be right for Richard. And ultimately for me, Richard has to, and the family have to get something out of this. That's the ultimate aim, is this is where they are, this is where they want to be. How do we help them do that? And can we share that information that will be helpful to other people? But we've got to see, is that going to be useful? So that's the number one. And then, as I say, we'll be producing other stuff off it. And then the data has to be right, because you can't collect everything. As Richard said, he's got into data now, and he says, I could do that, and that, but you've got to walk before you can run. And some of you will be doing this already, some of you won't, but it's data could mean just one thing you measure it's unlimited what you can measure, but it's basically what decisions can I make. So we're hoping we will be showing what have we measured, what decisions we're making. That sort of, again, it's a discussion. Richard, obviously, and the team will do smaller updates. We can't film, or say we don't have the budget to film every day on Richard's farm. We're not what's his name? We're not Diddley Scott. We don't have Jeremy Clarkson's, who has a team living with them. This is much, much smaller scale. But so we'll have smaller updates from Richard and the team, but also there'll be an overview of what's happening. But if there's specialist areas that you're interested in, then we'll be doing specialist videos, like the setup of data recording systems. And I'll come to that in a minute, because, and if there's an area you think we should cover, then please, that's why social media is great, because you can have that interaction. What would you want to see? What would you like more information on? So for me, it's a very different way than just us standing up traditionally at a farmers meeting and telling you lots of stuff. And I say, I don't know how this is going to go. We're sort of, not making it up as we go along, but not far off it. But the whole point is Matt is going to focus on technology and data collection. And one thing I think Rich's frustration is Kathleen gets a nice report what's going on. What we've found is Richard has some good equipment, but what it's not talking to each other. And it also means he's double handling data a lot of the time. So he's using this and sometimes he's recording it. And sometimes it's not seamless. He's got his mandatory stuff he has to collect. But if we could actually, and it's also, could he go into, when he goes into Mo Valley or wherever he buys his medicines, could he use his phone to log that? So it's seamless. So the data's not hindering you, it's actually helping you. It's not about, they shouldn't hinder you. And today was a classic example. We were condition scoring some ewes, and the reader was, you had to punch it. You had to punch it, scanned the tag all right, but then you had to, it set it at 0 every time, so you had to scroll up. It was slowing us down. It was really frustrating. So we actually decided only to scan the ones that were under 3, because that was the aim of today, is the under 3 were not fit for tupping, and that they were not going to the top. But the whole point is, if you don't have a system, if the data is slow and impedes you, you just get frustrated. And we all got frustrated and went back to a bit of paper to write down the other scores. It wasn't ideal, but that's something we have to iron out, is how do we make that better? Because Rich's dad, again, he would have been fed up in 5 minutes. It took us about an hour and a half to say this is not going to work and we have to move on. So we have to, data's good, but it can't hinder what we do. And that's why, how do we practically do this? I'm not suggesting we go back to paper and pen, but sometimes you have to make a practical decision and then we'll work on how to do it. So Matt has been spending a lot of the day trying to get these systems to work together, because you can buy all the system, but if it's not designed for what you want to do in your farm, then it's not, you're going to be frustrated with it. So there's a lot of this discussion today we were doing was about data and how do you get the equipment to do what you want it to do. It can, I mean, they can do lots of stuff, but what's right for you. So Matt's going to focus on that. Oh, as a video, I'm not going to show the video because it's too long. Let me just get, well, I'll just move that on, sorry. Neris is focusing on body condition score of the ewes. Not just that, that is Neris's speciality. And to me, and a lot of you'll know that body condition is everything when you come to managing ewes. And so what we've done in the summer is Neris and Matt and the team, they separated into 3 different management groups. Again, Richard having them too. We've moved them into skinny, fat, and the mids. So again, this is something, and making sure we've got this recorded. So we're building it up slowly. Richard might only have condition scored once. Ideally, in some places you'll condition score 5 times a year, but we build up to that. What's the point? Why are we doing it? What's the purpose of the data collection? So we can actually make it practical and useful, not just for the sake of it. So again, and Neris is an expert on that one. I'll say, well, this video doesn't say much. It just says Neris scoring ewes, but no, yeah, sorry, don't know if you can hear that. So the launch date. So we have been doing a lot of prep work this summer. We about March, but Richard obviously hosted Southwest Sheep, so he wasn't available to June. So what we did is we've been doing prep work, because we've got to understand, anybody who's consultant or has a consultant, it's about you and your farm. It's we have to understand the farm, so we know what Richard and his family want to achieve, because that, as I said that before, that has to be top of the thing. We've been planning our first steps, so getting them into management groups. We've done some interviews with the cast, so everybody in the farm, because it's interesting to know what everybody's view on this and what their views on what's happening. Because I said before, it's not just about change. You can't, if you decide to change, it's not always the rest of the family maybe don't want to do it. And how does it fit in with the other? We've got, I mean, on this farm, you've got there's kids that need looking after. You've got the shop that they have on the farm. You've got all bits and pieces, all the rest of it. How do I fit this in? So we were on farm today and we filmed our first episodes. We've got about 2.5 hours worth of footage. But we obviously, it's not going to be a 2.5. It's not a movie we're making, but we're just filming. Today we're following the ewes, the lambs, and also getting this data up. So we're launching imminently, and we're hoping that, yeah, is this, sorry, I'm just checking this. I think this is the video. I'll show you this video, if you can hear this.
I can't actually hear this.
Oh, you're not hearing it? Sorry. Well, no. What Neris is saying, Neris is actually saying is this is the 4th of August, and Neris is saying welcome to sunny Devon, because of all the dry summer we had, all it did was rain on the first day, which again is typical of when you start to do something. It was absolutely chucking it down the first day. So that was the first day we started. Again, it's nothing. It would be lovely, it would be sunny, but that's not how things work out. So we had a first day in August to go down, have a look at the ewes, have a look at the lambs, and understand what was going on. And then since then we've been planning. We've got the first episode. We filmed our first episode footage today. We're going to have to actually edit that, make sure it's interesting. And I say a lot of it is about these. It's about the machines, about how they talk, what you want, etc. So launch is imminent. So it's I'll ask is, I don't know how it's going to work, but we have a lot of information already. It's not as if, there's a lot of new research done, which is wonderful, but we've got a lot of stuff that we already know. Is how do we best use it practically? How can we use that? And I say it's not about saying what Richard does is right. It's about some of the principles that we can show on the farmers. Would they be helpful to somebody else? Can they start a discussion? What's the best thing to do? It's been interesting. We've been worm-egg counting his ewes, and again, I'm not going to tell you all the exciting bits, but it's been really fascinating what we've got. And what do you do with that information? So there'll be lots of discussions about that. And again, I think the more information we get and the more data we collect on farms, is we then have to have these discussions of what do you do with it? Because it's not like you get one number and you either go this way or that way. Sometimes and the thing is, all these tools like fecal egg counts, like these machines, it doesn't replace the fact that stockmanship or stock personship is still the number one. You've got to know your stock, you've got to know what you've done, and how do we bring that all together? So it's going to be at Western Farm, which will be the YouTube channel. You can already, there's no point doing that tomorrow because it's just still under construction, but you can go to Richard Stanbury's own Facebook page where he's got a lot of users already. We will be putting stuff, but we'll also be, when it's ready to go, we'll be putting stuff out through obviously NSA, through different channels, through the agricultural press. All I ask is please come and have a look, see what we've done. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it'll be useful, but tell us what would make it useful. So that's what it's a big experiment. Will it work? Will it be useful? So please give us your feedback. And so that's coming very soon. The other thing I just like to highlight is we do actually have, from Elanco's perspective, we obviously a lot of sheep brands. We've got our Collect, we've got our Zolvix, etc. But one thing we've always done for a long time is, what else can we give back? I don't want to just talk about our products. I want to talk about how, good information that helps farmers on the ground. And we have the Parasite, which is Ben Strugnell. For those of you who know Ben, will never have forgotten Ben. He does a lot of postmortems, and he carried some dead sheep to Malvern, the sheep event a couple of years ago, and by this time in the summer they were a bit smelly by the time they got there. But his post-mortem workshops are so well attended. So what we do every I think it's about 4 or 5 times a year, Ben and Matt, my colleague, have a chat about what he's seeing. What's he actually seeing on the ground? Homunculus is the one at the moment we're discussing. So some really good information there. That's the QR code you can look at. But you can go to Farm Animal Health at Elanco as well. It's not about our products. It's about hopefully some useful information. And that's all we're trying to do with this. And we'll see how it goes. And that's just an Elanco slide. So I'll just stop sharing now. So it's a bit of a whistle-top tour of what we're doing, but hopefully it will be of interest to people. And come and follow us. If you don't like it, tell us. If you do like us, tell us as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Fiona. That was, again, another really interesting talk. So we'll go to questions now. And we had one for Claire, if you're there still.
Yeah.
Asked, how do you detect lame sheep in the outdoor conditions?
Right. So the way we were doing is we were doing sample assessment. So we had a technician walking around with a pair of binoculars and try to take some sheep and see if they were lame or not. The idea is, by using the technology I was showing, a sheep that perhaps stopped coming to the feeder might be lame or might have an issue. So it's a proxy. You can't detect lameness as yet, unfortunately, but part of the project was trying to see, can you use that tech to replace someone walking around and telling you something is wrong? So I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I just had a couple of questions of my own for you as well. I just wondered if the collars at some point you thought that they might be able to be combined with the no fence collars.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no fence. In fact, we had some colleague in Norway who tried them as well, to see if they worked on sheep. The no fence collar are very good for cows and they work fine on goats, but on sheep it's still a bit of an issue. And the problem, of course, is the price of it. You can't put a collar on each of the animal, but maybe combining, as you say, some of the cheaper collar with the no fence and hope to have a system. Maybe in 5 years we'll get that tech working or not, but at least farmers are getting a bit more aware of what's out there.
Yeah. And with your where you monitored the animals in transport, did you then monitor them once they came off the lorry or ship to see how that affected them in the hours or days afterwards?
So for the ship, it was difficult because it was commercial flock. So the researcher didn't really have access to the animal once they left. So all they could do is observe them when they came out and do some visual assessment. For the animal in the trailer, because they came from our research farm to the abattoir, we were able to do welfare assessment before and after. And actually, we didn't notice much difference. In the Spanish one, they were doing more experiments. They looked at cortisol level and temperature of the lamb and the kid, and they could see that definitely there was an impact, especially on the kid. They were getting quite cold being transported in March. So yeah.
And the other thing I was also wondering about was with your walkthrough weigh crate, because especially with the sheep and I'm sure goats is similar, that they do tend to follow on one another. Do you find that it's quite a problem getting more than one sheep in at a time to do the weighing?
No, so they worked on that device quite a lot because of that issue of sheep piling in. So they've developed like an S bend inside the weigh crate. So it's a bit like when you go through the underground, you have to go through a barrier. So similar system, and that seems to work even with lamb. So it's there's lots of trial and error, but it's quite interesting. The only issue with the walkover way is if you're in an outdoor system like behind me, where do you put the weigh crate? That's the problem. But if you're on maybe a bit less hill but more upland or lowland, I think it's a good system potentially.
Brilliant, interesting. And Fiona, with the collection of the data on farms, do you not necessarily on Western Farm, but do you find that people quite often collect quite a lot of data and then don't really use it or know
Exactly.
how to use it?
Yeah, and I think it's all once you get it, you can collect lots of stuff. And that's why the first thing we did to do was actually just to chat to Richard, just what does he actually want at the end of it? So we start as what you're actually trying to do with your system, and then we work back to what you really need to collect, because otherwise you just have lots and lots of data. And I've seen it many times over the years. People have spreadsheet after spreadsheet, and they go, "What do I do with it?" So again, it's you've got to know what you want to do with it first and then work back. But you can still do, even if you collected all that data, it's still good. But if you don't know where you're trying to get to, then it's just lots of data, isn't
And
it?
do you find that quite a few farmers haven't given that much thought to actually where they want to get to because they're so sort of, it's very easy to just carry on as you've been doing and not give the thought to where you want to get to. And
Oh, absolutely. And and this is not a criticism. We all do. We've all done it. We've done the job for years, and there's been a lot. There's been grants to get a lot of the equipment. It's all there, but it's a lot of people have just said, "I've got it. I can do this," but I've actually not decided what I actually want to do. And it doesn't have to be really fancy. It's just, yes, I would agree with you. And I can't speak for all farmers, and I know a lot of people have, but I always say it's you've got to do that. Otherwise, you are just going to collect data.
yeah,
Random and almost random data. It could be useful, but if you don't know where the end point is, these things will collect at. You can put whatever you want and you can collect and collect. Just where'd you stop? So.
And I guess that's a sort of good reason sometimes to get one of the sheep advisors out on farm just to
exactly
point you in the right direction and chat through these things as well.
Yeah, and Matt did a great job this morning with Richard. Richard does collect data and he knows what he wants, but he's also now got a taste of it, and so he's going, I could do this, I could do that. I said in talk, it's let's keep bringing it back, and it's having somebody who's experienced in doing that is really useful. And one thing, if this project shows anything, is we need a team to do this. Not one person has all the answers, and it's not a sign of weakness. It's not anything. Is you want to get the most out of all of this, get some help, because it's, or some advice, not help, but advice, because we've all got our skill sets, we've all got bits we're good at. So
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and you've turned your microphone
Yes,
up. You have a question?
Me quietly hovering on the sidelines here. I've probably got to declare an interest in that. I was a farmer stakeholder right from the start in Claire's project, and so I have a fair grasp of what's going on in it. And just trying to tie it in a bit with something we heard last night from Emily about the importance of naval health, particularly during lambing in indoor lambing flocks, and tying that in, Claire, with what you were, well, you didn't say very much about the various environmental sensors that you've got and tested both outside a shed and in the environment and on the floor in the sheds, because there are still, in spite of a biggish move towards outdoor lambing, there's still a hell of a lot of sheep that spend a lot of time in sheds in this country, and the environment is less than exciting in some of them at lambing time, and not very helpful from the naval health point of view.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I could not present everything. It was really hard to choose.
Yeah.
But yes, the application that we developed with a Spanish partner was really useful for indoor conditions. So we had sensor for bedding humidity, and then some dust sensor, as well as temperature. And based on that, we could calculate the THI of inside the shed. And the way we've done it is, on the app, you can see each of your sensor represented as a little rectangular of a certain color. And if it went above or below a certain threshold, the color would change, and you could see that on your phone. So we tested it in all the 56 farms in the large scale, and most of the farmers were indoor farmers, and they really found that useful. So, for example, for bedding, if you had a leak in your water trough, for example, you could see that suddenly the humidity is a bit different to how it should be. So farmers, especially in Spain, were really keen to have that app, and they were quite happy with it. But I agree with you, Jan, that's something that could be helpful for farmer in this country, even if you're not having your sheep inside all the time. And the sensor to put in the farm were less than £1,000.
I was going to say it's a relatively cheap thing as well.
Yeah. And I know people say, well, if you want to know about temperature, look outside. But I think having some sort of alert is still quite useful. You don't have to go outside. You can stay in bed and check how cold it is.
It's not just the temperature, it's humidity and ammonia levels and things like this that are going to cause the difficulty, particularly if you've got ewes indoors that haven't been shorn, and the respiratory stress and how that affects pre-lambing, anyhow, how that in the last stages of pregnancy, how that's going to affect food intake. Exactly,
yeah. So more things we could be doing, Jan, as you've heard many times in that project. But it's quite exciting as you think about it. There is a lot of things you can get that is not too costly for farmer, and as Fiona was saying, trying to make sense of the data you're getting in a simple visual way for the farmer.
Brilliant.
While I'm here, I might as well ask Fiona something as well. Fine doing it on one farm, Fiona, but how will you then extrapolate that? And this is a question I know every farmer says, oh, my farm's different. How do you extrapolate that to different situations? Okay, you can get a broad idea from a lowland farm from their point of view, but how do you extrapolate to an upland farm, for instance, or a total permanent pasture situation, as opposed to one where they can plough up ground and put new seeds in, and so on and so forth. And one where they've got cattle and sheep, so a heck of a different options to manage your pasture for, as Bruce was saying last night, in terms of cleaning your worms out, because you're on a permanent pasture situation, you probably can't do that.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm not saying it'll be the be all to everybody. It's not going to be, and some things about potentially using data and setting goals and stuff can be extrapolated, but the actual pasture management using, if you can't rotate, that's not going to, if you can't use different pastures, you can't reseed, that isn't going to be relevant. So some of it will be relevant. I'd love to have a whole series of farms, Jan, to be honest with you, and do it. But we've got to start somewhere. We're starting here, and then hopefully some general principles. But ultimately, what we want people to do is, it's not like this is going to be a blueprint of how you do it. We want people to say, look, I'd like to do this, and go and speak to their vets, go and speak to their SKPs, go and speak to their advisors and say, how can I do this on my farm? Because it's trying to, people say, I think there's more I can get. There's something I can do. I need, and asking people for their advice, because we can't cover everything in one farm. You're absolutely right.
And Fiona, I know we've got some young new entrants on the call tonight, and they probably haven't actually started using data collection yet. So could you just give a brief sort of rundown of things that you can use it for to achieve in your flock?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on this, Susie, so we should have had Mr. Blythe on here, because he's a thing. But so, I mean, what Richard said is, we said to Richard, how did you start? He said, he got into daily live weight gains. He was trying to get a weight, and he didn't weigh them all the time, is how fast are my lambs growing? That's what he started with. So that's getting, and you don't have to weigh them all. He probably starts about weaning time and then moves on. He doesn't have all the birth weights, so it's starting, how fast are my lambs growing? But the other thing is body condition score reviews, getting a handle on what your ewes are when you wean them, and before you tuck them, is that, that's some good things to start with. You don't have to have lots of equipment for that. It's just getting started, doing something.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, both of you have been really interesting tonight. I've just got a couple of bits for the NSA to mention. One is, those of you that aren't members, I just urge you to go and have a look at the website, see what the NSA does do for the sheep industry, all the work they do behind the scenes, and of course it is funded by membership. So if you're interested in becoming a member, you can join up there. And also on the 18th of November, we've got the NSA Sheep Farmers Conference up in Harrogate. So you can also register to attend that on the website, as far as I know. And I think talking about the Register of Sheep Advisors, Trusted Sheep Advisors, Nicola is hopefully going to post the list, if she's able to share that.
Yeah, I've popped the link in the chat, so I think it's been used quite a lot tonight. That sometimes you have a lot of data and you don't really know what to do with it, and obviously Claire's discussions about all the technology out there. If anyone's not aware, there's a trusted list of registered advisors, so the Register of Sheep Advisors, available on the NSA website. So there's an interactive map. You can find a local advisor or one that will travel to where you're based, and it's got their bios in terms of what they do and what their specialisms are, ranging from nutrition, grassland management, forage, parasites, technology. That everyone's got a different specialism, and you can pick one that suits your farm. So I'll pop the link to that in the chat, but if anyone wants any more information on that, please feel free to get in touch with NSA about it.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to those of you that haven't done so already, I see a few of you have popped it on there, just again to put your, for the Rosa and Amtra points, to put your membership number and name in on the chat, so that we know you've sort of attended right through to the end. And it just remains me to thank the sponsors for the evening as well, which is Novac's, Healthcare, Rapper, Elanco, British Wool, MSD by Animal Health, Bimeda, and iLivestock. We're really grateful for the support and helping us to put these SHWAP evenings on. So we're back again tomorrow night, again at 7 o'clock, with another couple of really interesting speakers. If you haven't already registered, please do so, and you can get your link then for the Zoom to come and join us. Thank you everybody tonight that's joined, and look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. And thank you, Fiona and Claire.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.